$300,000 sitting untouched for 20 years becomes roughly $2 million, not because of some hot stock tip, not because of a crypto pump, just math. And here's the part that trips people up. Once you cross a certain number, the correct move isn't to work harder at investing. It's the opposite. You stop. You stop picking stocks. You stop checking the app 4 times a day. You stop trying to be clever. And that one shift, doing less on purpose, is what separates the people who actually get to $1 million from the people who stay stuck at 98,000 for a decade. So let's talk about why. This isn't a video about finding better investments. I'm not going to tell you the next stock to buy or the next coin to ape into. This is about a threshold, a specific number where the math starts working differently, and 5 rules that determine whether you cross it or whether you sit right below it, forever almost there. $100,000 turns out to be a mathematically strange number. It's the point where compounding stops being a theory in a textbook and starts becoming a force you can actually feel year over year in your own account. Most people never get to feel that, not because they didn't save enough, but because they broke one of these 5 rules without knowing it existed. There's a concept in physics called critical mass. It's the point where a chunk of radioactive material stops needing outside energy to keep reacting. It sustains itself. Below that mass, nothing happens, no matter how long you wait. Above it, the reaction feeds itself, and it keeps going whether you touch it or not. Your money works the same way. Below a certain amount, growth is slow and fragile, and depends entirely on you adding more. Above it, the account starts pulling its own weight. I'm going to come back to this phrase a few times tonight, so keep it in your pocket. Don't touch the reactor. Every rule we cover is really just a different way of protecting that one idea. You think the problem is not having enough money to start. It's actually not starting early enough with the money you do have. Here's a guy, let's call him Marcus, 31 years old, decent job, finally has $40,000 saved and feels behind because his coworker has triple that. Marcus assumes the fix is finding a better investment, something with a higher return, something that'll let him catch up. So he starts chasing individual stocks, options plays, the occasional meme coin, trying to compress 15 years of growth into 3. What Marcus doesn't do is the boring thing. Put that $40,000 into a low-cost index fund and leave it alone. If he'd done that at 7% average annual return, in 20 years, that $40,000 alone, no new contributions, becomes about $155,000. Add even modest monthly contributions on top, and he's well past $1 million before he's 55. The lesson isn't invest more aggressively. It's that time in the market is doing 80% of the work, and every year you spend trying to outsmart the market instead of just being in it is a year of compounding you don't get back. Time is the one input you cannot buy more of later. Protect it first. You think a 1% fee is basically nothing. It's actually the difference between retiring and not. This is where Marcus becomes useful again, because Marcus has a rival, a coworker named Keith. Same starting point, same $40,000, same 20-year timeline. Marcus goes with a fund charging 0.03%. Keith goes with a managed fund charging 1.2% because it came with a nice PDF and a guy in a suit. Same 7% market return for both of them. After 20 years, Marcus's account is sitting north of $150,000 from that initial lump sum. Keith's account, same starting number, same market, is sitting closer to $122,000. That gap, nearly $30,000, didn't come from Keith picking worse investments. It came entirely from fees quietly eating the compounding before it could compound. Fees don't feel like they're doing anything year to year. That's exactly what makes them dangerous. Kill the fee drag first before you optimize anything else, because everything else you do gets taxed by that fee every single year it's in place. You think taxes are something you deal with once a year in April. They're actually something that either protects your reactor or slowly bleeds it, depending on which which account your money sits in. Money sitting in a regular taxable brokerage account gets taxed on dividends every year and taxed again on gains when you sell. Money sitting inside a Roth IRA or a Roth 401k, once it's in there and aging properly, grows completely untouched and comes out untouched. Same 7% return, same 20 years, wildly different outcome, because one version of you is paying a toll every single year and one version of you isn't. This is the least exciting rule and also the one most people skip, because open a Roth IRA doesn't feel as urgent as buy this stock. But remember the metaphor. Don't touch the reactor and make sure the IRS isn't touching it either. Real quick, because this next part is the one people message me about most. If you're finding this useful, hit subscribe, because I break down one of these systems every single week and you don't want to miss the next one. And if you want the deeper version of everything I'm covering tonight with the actual account structures and the exact order to fund them in, that's all laid out in the book, linked below. It's not a get-rich guide. It's the boring mechanical stuff that actually works, which honestly is rarer than it should be. Okay, back to it. Because here's the thing that changes the math again, and I've almost never seen it explained in plain English. You think the goal is to hit $1 million. It's actually to hit $1 million and then know exactly how much of it you're allowed to touch each year without breaking the reactor. This is where people who did everything right for 20 years blow it in year 21. There's a rule of thumb that says you can withdraw around 4% of a properly invested portfolio each year and, historically, not run it down to zero over a 30-year retirement. On $1 million, that's roughly $40,000 a year. It sounds small compared to the big number, and that's exactly the trap. People see 7 figures and start spending like the reactor can handle any load they throw at it. It can't. Pull too much too early, especially in the first few bad market years, and you can permanently damage a portfolio that would have otherwise lasted decades. The number that matters isn't the total. It's the number you're allowed to take out every year without the fire going cold. You think discipline means doing something. It actually means doing nothing on purpose, over and over, for years, while it feels like nothing is happening. This is the hardest rule because it fights human nature directly. Every instinct tells you that if your money isn't being actively managed, tweaked, rebalanced constantly, watched, it's being neglected. The data says almost the opposite. Investors who check their accounts daily and trade frequently consistently underperform investors who set up automatic contributions and essentially forget the account exists for years at a time. The reactor doesn't need you fiddling with it. It needs you to leave it alone long enough for the physics to do what physics does. Let's put all 5 rules to work at once. Because theory is nice, but I want you to see it stacked. Meet Sarah, $3,400,000 saved, trying to decide what to do with it. In scenario A, Sarah does what feels natural. She keeps trading individual positions in a taxable account with a broker charging just under 1%, and she checks it constantly, tweaking every few months. In scenario B, Sarah moves the $100,000 into a low-fee index fund inside a Roth account, sets automatic monthly contributions, and does not touch it for 25 years. Same market conditions, same starting balance. Scenario A limps to somewhere around $400,000, dragged down by fees, taxes on every trade, and the emotional cost of constant tinkering that leads to buying high and selling low more often than she'd admit. Scenario B, doing objectively less work, crosses well past $14 million. Same woman, same $100,000. The only difference is which 5 rules she followed. Back to Marcus and Keith 20 years later. Marcus, who protected time, killed the fee drag, used the right accounts, respected the 4% number, and mostly ignored his portfolio. Marcus retires comfortably with a reactor that's still running strong. Keith, who did almost everything Marcus did except pay attention to fees and taxes, still ends up fine, but he's short by a number that would have meant an extra 5 years of freedom, or a paid-off house, or simply not thinking about money every month. Same effort, same jobs, same starting point. The 5 rules were the entire gap. So here's what I want you to actually do this week, not someday. First, check the expense ratio on whatever you're currently invested in. If it starts with a 1 or higher, that's rule 2 talking to you. Second, if you don't have a Roth IRA or Roth 401k open yet, open one before you do anything else with new money. That's rule 3, and it costs you nothing to set up. Third, pick one account you check too often and turn off the notifications for 30 days. That's rule 5, and it's the one that costs you the most if you skip it. Don't touch the reactor. Lazy investing, done correctly, has built more fortunes than crypto memes ever will. I'll see you in the next one.